Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990s Represent. We're in the middle of our 8th cycle of 1992, talking about a movie. In this episode, we're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie. I remember watching it back in like maybe 1995. It may have been 1996. I had seen parts of it on HBO prior to that. The stuff I remember seeing on HBO mostly were the introduction with like the bleeding when Dracula stabs the cross and all the blood pours out of it. I remember that, and I remember the intro with Keanu Reeves' character arriving at Dracula's castle. But yeah, that was the stuff I saw on HBO maybe in 1993, whenever it first hit HBO. And then I think my friend and I rented it from the local like grocery store video department back in, I want to say it was 1995, maybe 1996. And that was the only time I had fully seen the movie until rewatching it again somewhat recently. I think I watched it on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on there, but I watched it a little bit ago. Um, and it's kind of cheesy. Like, I think it kind of always was cheesy. I remember people taking it probably more seriously back in 1992. But the cheesiness kind of works. Like, it kind of does feel like a silly, maybe not silly, silly might not be the right word, but a kind of cheesy, kind of gothic romance novel, which I guess uh, it's partly that in the book as well. And I know the Nosferatu films kind of spun off of the novel here. There are similarities between both. I don't think I've ever seen the original Nosferatu. I've seen like clips of it, but when they put out the was it Eggers, I think, did a the Nosferatu with Nicholas Hoult and whoever else was in that. That I thought was pretty good. But yeah, we're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I have my notes here for it. We're gonna get to the notes and then we'll do like a plot wrap up and all that. So let me see here. So we have Bram Stoker's Dracula, first released November 13th, 1992. Like I said, I remember seeing bits and pieces of it on HBO, and then finally got together, watched it with a friend of mine. He actually pointed out a goof in the movie. I think Quincy is the character's name, played by Billy Campbell. There's a scene where he's and it's a scene at a party for, I think Lucy is the character, who is Mina Harker's friend. Um, and there's a scene where this guy is, you see him in one frame or one shot holding his hat, and in the next shot, you see somebody get up from the couch that they're on, and he's sitting on his hat, and he gives him the hat back. He's like, "Oh, so sorry about your hat." So in one scene, the guy's holding the hat. The next scene, and you don't see him set it down or anything like that. So, and the next scene, somebody is sitting on it. Just like a little fun goof my friend pointed out when we first watched it. And I always kind of remember that. And then when I checked out the goofs on IMDb, that was one of the ones that was listed. But yeah, I remember this being kind of a big deal in 1992 because it was supposed to be this. I don't really know how faithful it is, how faithful of an adaptation it is, but it was supposed to be at the time, a somewhat super serious Dracula movie. All the other Dracula stuff that was kind of before that is kind of the stuff that is the stereotypical like vampire movies, like your vampire costumes that you see or used to see like all the time for Halloween, like the kind of medallion and the black um, suit with cape, the white face paint and the fangs, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, this one was apparently like at least billed as being a somewhat very serious adaptation of the novel. So I remember it being a pretty big thing in 1992 when it came out. But it comes across as really cheesy, and I don't mean that in a terrible way. It's kind of fun because it's like the two, like not the two leads, like the second main lead I would say would be Winona Ryder, and her kind of British accent. It works, but you can definitely tell it's like a forced accent. Keanu Reeves' accent is not great either, even though I think Coppola said he actually. I have a quote from Francis Ford Coppola, which we'll get to later in the video, where he was saying how seriously Keanu Reeves was actually working on trying to get the accent right. and it comes across as cheesy. It's not my favorite Keanu Reeves role, but you can definitely tell he was putting in effort into the role. But we got that. Um, the cast. Let me actually just bring up the cast because the cast is actually pretty impressive. Let me just bring this up here. The cast of this is actually pretty good. You have Gary Oldman. Of course, Gary Oldman is a highlight of the film as Dracula. You have Winona Ryder as Mina Harker. Anthony Hopkins plays Van Helsing. You have Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker. Richard E. Grant is in this as well. I remember him mostly. Probably my favorite movie with him in it is probably Spice World. We've talked about that on the channel here before. Carrie Ellis is in it. I totally forgot that he was in the movie. Same with Billy Campbell. Billy Campbell was in The Rocketeer. Played Captain O'Connor on the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Sadie Frost is in this. I think this is her first movie, and I don't think I've seen her in anything else. I know she's been in a bunch of stuff, but it's stuff that I just haven't happened to see or have not seen. Tom Waits is in this. He obviously the kind of blues singer plays Renfield in this. Very good in this performance. And then you have Monica Bellucci as one of Dracula's brides. She would go on to play, I think, Persephone in the Matrix sequels. But yeah, the cast is pretty stacked overall. Huge, great performance from Gary Oldman because he plays Dracula in various forms. Like you have him as the kind of like beginning of the movie where he's like wearing his battle armor and he renounces the church. You have that version of Dracula. You have the old version of Dracula that we see when Keanu Reeves' character Jonathan Harker shows up to his castle. That one I remember seeing a very funny. I think it was I don't know what number it was, but the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. I think it was they did that character with Mr. Burns because it's like got like the weird hair and he's like super old. So that version of Dracula. You have Dracula with the kind of John Lennon like glasses that we see when he gets back to London, and then you have another like version of like so Gary Oldman did a lot of the heavy lifting in this movie. So great performance from him overall. We got that. Yeah, Keanu Reeves kind of like I remember like even in like my first viewing or the clips I saw before I saw the movie initially, he felt kind of out of place. I think he still kind of is out of place, but I think I liked him more in the movie this go around. He's not in the movie a ton. He shows up in the beginning. He ends up getting stranded at like Dracula's castle and shows back up again toward like the third act when they are devising a plan to eliminate Dracula. He's involved in that part of the movie. But he disappears from the movie for a pretty big portion of it. We got that. We go there. Let's see what we got here. Apparently, the script was written by James V. Hart, and apparently it was the screenplay. Winona Ryder brought attention to the screenplay by talking to Francis Ford Coppola, and I did not know this going into this video that apparently she thought that Francis Ford Coppola didn't like her because I think she apparently was originally cast in The Godfather Part 3. Don't know what role it was. It could have been the role that ended up going to Sofia Coppola because Sofia Coppola, if it is that role, could be a thing where it's like, hey, my actress backed out, and he's just gonna go get his family member to be in the film or get her to be in it. So let me actually see here. So I don't know if that was the thing. So Francis Ford Coppola. Yeah, so basically it's like, hey, like this actress backed out. I gotta go get my daughter to be in this instead. I don't really know. But so apparently she thought that Coppola didn't like her because she kind of backed out of that movie at the last minute. But she brought attention to the screenplay that was written by James V. Hart. We have a great performance from Gary Oldman. I have a is it the Gary Oldman quote here? Yeah, so I have a quote from Gary Oldman here. And apparently this is his first major kind of like American movie, I think. First big American movie is how he describes it. But the quote from Gary Oldman, it says about kind of getting cast in this movie was, quote, it was an opportunity to work with Coppola, who I consider one of the great American directors. That was enough, really. It was my first big American movie made on a big set with lots of costumes. For a young actor, that was a tremendous experience. So, yeah, when you look at Gary Oldman's filmography, it's an incredibly impressive filmography. You have obviously you have this movie. You have him play Commissioner Gordon in the Batman, the Christopher Nolan Batman films. He's great. We talked about it not that long ago, but he was in Lost in Space. One of the highlights of that movie. Great in like The Fifth Element. Yeah, so just an incredible actor, and him in this movie, he was great in this. So that was a great quote from him. Apparently, Christian Slater was offered the role of Jonathan Harker initially, but turned it down before it went to Keanu Reeves. We have now a couple quotes from I think Coppola about Keanu Reeves's involvement in this film. There's actually two of them. It says, "quote We tried to get some kind of matinee idol for the part of Jonathan, because it isn't such a great part. If we all were to go to the airport, Keanu is the one that the girls would just besiege." And then there's another quote from Coppola about his accent, because Reeves' accent, you can definitely tell it's not. It comes across kind of forced, but he says, "quote He tried so hard. That was the problem. Actually, he wanted to do it perfectly, and in trying to do it perfectly, it came off as stilted. I tried to get him to just relax with it and not do it so fastidiously. So maybe I wasn't as critical of him, but that's because I like him personally so much. To this day, he's a prince in my eyes." So, like, basically, Reeves didn't quite nail the accent, but really, really worked hard at doing it. So we got that. Got nominated for 4 Academy Awards, and it won 3 out of those 4. One for costume design, great costumes. Sound editing was pretty good there. Makeup, so you had the makeup on Dracula and Dracula's brides was very well done. And then obviously like the makeup on I think the character Lucy when she's becoming a vampire, pretty good makeup there. And it also got nominated for Best Art Direction. Didn't win that one though. And the visual effects look kind of antiquated. Remember, it looks like when they're driving, when they're taking the cart up to Dracula's castle, it kind of looks like a model or a matte painting. And I think that was by design because Coppola wanted to use more antiquated visual effects techniques in the film. So he felt it looked appropriate due to kinds of the nature of the film and the time period of the film. And maybe almost in a way to pay homage to kind of some of the classics as well. All right, that's that. Now we're going to get into our plot here. So obviously based on Bram Stoker's Dracula novel from I think the late early 1890s. And then again, this got adapted into Nosferatu as well. Anyhow, starts off in a war, and Dracula is one of the better soldiers in this army. And you see him wearing this cool battle armor, just impaling a bunch of different enemies, killing a bunch of different enemies. But while this is going on, the enemies have thrown a note into Dracula's castle or wherever it is, saying that his wife had died. That did not happen, but that caused his wife to kill herself because like, hey, my husband's dead. I'm going to kill myself. She does. He goes back to the church, and they're saying basically that your wife's soul has no salvation because she killed herself. So Dracula basically renounces the church, renounces God, stabs a sword into the cross, and like blood starts pouring out of it, and then aligns himself with darkness and becomes a vampire. Vividly remember that scene from watching the clips because like the scene of just like him slaughtering all these people and then the blood pouring out of the cross was kind of a crazy thing to see back then. So that was like a really cool scene. It ends up, and then we jump forward to kind of London, and Jonathan Harker is being tasked with going to Transylvania to deal with Dracula and these land deals. He's buying up property all over London, and he's getting sent there to kind of finalize these transactions. And I think he's like, well, why don't you just send Renfield there? Because Renfield basically, I think, was doing the same thing prior to that, but came back and is now in an insane asylum. Renfield played greatly by Tom Waits in this. Forget who played. Was it? I forget who played Renfield in the newest version of Nosferatu. But I know Nicholas Hoult played Renfield in. It was interesting because Nicholas Hoult played Renfield in the Renfield movie with Nicolas Cage, and then also played Jonathan Harker in another in Nosferatu like a year or two later. Don't remember what it was. Just an interesting connection. So yeah, Jonathan Harker travels to Transylvania to deal with Dracula. He gets put into Dracula's castle. He accidentally insults Dracula because Dracula is like all talking about like, well, this like he's like it didn't work out, and like I think he makes like a kind of comment, and Dracula pulls a sword on Harker, and he's like, "It is no laughing matter," or whatever he says, something like that. Dracula then basically, I vividly remember the part where he is shaving, and Dracula like is like licking like the razor for the blood and all that. Jonathan Harker gets surrounded by Dracula's brides, and I think like they're trying to seduce him. So basically, he gets stranded there while Dracula heads off to London. Mina's friend Lucy has these 3 different suitors that she's like dealing with. So there's like a huge party, and that's where I mentioned the hat scene, where like the guy sits on the hat, but the hat really didn't get sat on or whatever it was. But yeah, they're having this huge party, and then Dracula travels back to London in like boxes of Transylvanian soil, so he's able to transport himself that way. Goes to London, and now he is young Dracula, the iconic-looking Gary Oldman with the John Lennon sunglasses, and he meets Mina because he saw a locket. Jonathan Harker had a locket with a picture of her on it, and it reminded Dracula of his wife. Like they look basically identical. So he goes back to London and he finds Mina. This is after Dracula has already like bitten Lucy, because like you see, she is running through a garden. Mina Harker's running through a garden and sees Lucy getting attacked by by Dracula in like wolf form. And a major plot point of the movie is Lucy's kind of transformation into a vampire. Like the doctors don't know what's going on. Richard E. Grant plays like one of the major doctors in the film. They eventually have to bring in Van Helsing to figure out what's actually going on. But yeah, her condition is like deteriorating throughout the film. But Dracula meets up with Mina Harker in London, and they don't have such a great interaction the first time, but then they start hanging out, and she ends up like kind of like falling in love with Dracula. And then, but it turns out that Keanu Reeves' character Jonathan Harker survived the encounter with Dracula's brides, and then was recovering at like a convent in like Romania, I think is where it was. So Mina Harker gets word of this, and it angers Dracula, but like she ends up going to Romania to marry Jonathan Harker because they were engaged, and she was staying with Lucy while Jonathan was out on business in Transylvania dealing with Dracula. Lucy's condition continues to deteriorate. They bring in, like I said, Van Helsing in, who determines that she has like vampirism and is turning into a vampire. I think she eventually like dies, and they put her in a coffin, but then she reawakens as being undead. They eventually drive a stake through her heart and decapitate her as well. And then they decide to go after Dracula. Like I think like Renfield ended up warning them about it, but Renfield is also kind of like wondering where like his master is. He's like, well, you said like I would get this, or like, and Renfield's going insane, like eating bugs and stuff. But Dracula, since Renfield warned them, Dracula comes back to the insane asylum and kills off Renfield. He eventually turns Mina into a vampire, but Van Helsing is able to stop it, or at least slow her condition by like putting a communion wafer on her head, and like that is like enough to hold the transformation at bay for a while. But they end up going, and they end up taking out Dracula's brides. They go to Dracula's Dracula has like one box of soil left, so he takes himself back to I think Transylvania that way. And then the final fight, they basically Dracula gets stabbed through the heart, and Mina and Dracula go into the church. And as Dracula is dying, he reverts. He's like in like a weird, like ghoulish looking state, but he ends up transforming back to the younger version of Dracula that we see earlier in the film. Um, and he kind of just says, "Give me peace," and then Mina Harker stabs him, decapitates him, and looks up at the roof of the church and sees like the stained glass painting of Dracula and his wife or whatever it was, and the cross that was in the church that was stabbed earlier. You see it like reverse. It's like the stab wound goes away and it's like healed basically, kind of like a love heals all kind of situation. And that's kind of where the movie ends. It was fun to watch. I had like not seen it in a very long time. Like I said, it came across as kind of cheesy this time, but in a way that worked, where it was like kind of done in a way that felt intentional, based on the kind of gothic love story that they were trying to present here. So yeah, I had fun with it. But that is going to do it for this video. I'll be back in a few days covering a 1992 video game before jumping into 1993 and then moving on to the rest of the decade as well. So again, that's going to do it for now. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.